Hi there, I'm Danny Henderson. Welcome back to my beautiful channel. Before I introduce my new friend, I'm going to say you are so welcome, friends. You are so welcome because you are going to love, if you haven't met her already, the one and only, the great psychic, SRA survivor, remote viewer, psychic experiencer extraordinaire, the one, the only, Beverli Rhodes. Welcome, my love.
Hi, thank you, Danny. That's a lovely intro.
Well, it's all true, and there's so much to say about you. Just don't know where to start, but I will let the beautiful audience that come here know. I was up till 2:30 in the morning so I could finish this incredible book that is based on your childhood. And just like Kathy O'Brien's book and Gloria Master's book and other books, this is not an easy read. I'm also massively drawn to the horses too. And it's just beautiful how these beautiful, loving beasts really did help you through a lot of your horrific childhood. But we will start in your childhood from formative days. So, would you take us into areas from first memories?
Okay, so yeah, well, thank goodness for the horses. Otherwise, I don't think a lot of us would be here because they're angels with four legs and a tail. So earliest memories are sort of the shed and being desensitized to bugs, or trying to be desensitized to bugs, where you have to sit on a stool and start stretching parts of the female anatomy that would be necessary for later. So I was sitting on the stool for not that long initially, because obviously you're a small child and you just want to get going and be in the garden and enjoying yourself. So that was the first start of it. I didn't at the time didn't think anything of it. And then the second memory was the washing of the car. So we had like a really old, well, it's old now, wasn't old at the time, was a Morris Minor, was a navy blue one, and used to stink of petrol. And in the back of the Morris Minor, he had, the Ladybird uh, little girl knickers. And at the time, he was actually selling my knickers to his cronies. And in order to make sure that I would always have a long line of knickers available, he would make sure that he kept them underneath the tire, spare tire in the boot, and he would just replenish it. So as one would go, there would be another one. And he was very clever. He always made sure that the knickers were the same knickers. So it was always Ladybird. They were always white, and they were always little girls' drawers. So I remember being one of the lucky ones of always having pretty frocks and new knickers. I never had hand-me-downs and I never had old ones. So that was quite an interesting thing to remember, that, you have new knickers. Never knew why I was the one that had new knickers.
It's beyond thought. It's hearing something like that from this filth, this scum of the earth, Pedo, that, your father that raised you like a father. Is he dead? And
Oh, he's long dead.
is
Yes,
he? Is he?
yes.
Do you want to say his name, and the woman that said she was your mum? Do you want to say her name too? Feel
Oh,
free.
yes. His full name was Patrick Daniel Rhodes. So he was my handler for the time that he was alive. But he'd actually, very cleverly, he'd ensured that there were other handlers in America and there were other handlers here in the UK that had a hand in making sure that he was able to make as much money in as quick as possible time, that he was able to. He really did make sure, because I think he knew there was like a sell by date with me, because I had that little cherubium look, if you like. And that was something that he traded on for quite a long time. He was very strict about, if he felt that I was getting too fat, or if he felt that I was sort of putting on weight in the wrong areas and didn't have the little podgy cheeks and things like that. If that was changing, he would absolutely make sure that was put under control. So then he put me out on the back step and made me sit on the back of the step in the cold and put my dinner out there with me. It's very difficult to eat your dinner in the cold on a back step in the UK when it's absolutely bloody freezing. So, you know, then you're going to lose weight because of that for sure. So, yeah, that was him. And he was, in his life, he was extremely good looking, total narcissist. And if you spoke to anybody that knew him, they just thought he was a diamond of a man. They thought not only was he good looking, but they just thought that, you know, as a Freemason, he was doing all these good deeds. Not. It was just a front for him to be able to sell his goods.
I guess I should have told the viewers, like I normally do, like when I'm, with Kathy O'Brien or Rachel Vaughan or Gloria Masters, etc. I'll often say this is a graphic warning. Get your kids out the room. Get your kids out the room, everyone. Get them out or put your headphones in. Because this is really difficult information to hear. And just dreadful that you, as a beautiful little girl, any child of any quality of whatever, wherever they live, would ever be touched or harmed by these filthy, dirty, soulless, evil adults. Now, the Freemasons, they get a bad rap. And the fact is, there's an amazingly beautiful, incredible brotherhood of good men and good women. But it's been infiltrated. And it's the infiltrators that do the heinous crimes, that have the pedo clubs, that this little girl was taken to while these filthy, dirty scumbags are sitting under a blanket playing with themselves. So the Masonic lodges that were used all the way across England, I've got no more toys to throw me. My little puppy's going nuts. There were, go ahead, go and say the areas, say the Masonic lodges, name the names, just let's have it out. Because we've got to have more courage, as you know. We've got to have more courage. They are still getting away with it. They're still trying, and I want them all to know. I want them all to know, Beverli, the children, little girls like you and little boys at the hands of these monsters, we are coming for you all.
I think that that's definitely the way. I will agree with you, Danny. There are those at the lower echelons, those that are just starting, obviously not the 33 degrees, but those that are just starting, that are still learning their book and, donning their white little gloves and getting their aprons and doing all the good things, and have been seconded by certain individuals to help. There are those that are still new, that are not aware of a secondary underhanded layer of individuals. And there are only those who would condone this type of activity, that would even be invited into the inner circle. Most never get to see the inner circle. Most of them never have an opportunity, ever, and will never be exposed to that which is happening. They won't be in an environment at night in the lodges with what goes on at night in the lodges. They would never go to the PDF, daytime parties. They wouldn't, because they seem to have this uncanny way of understanding that certain folks will agree to it and participate and others won't. So those that won't, they just stay and remain, a good Freemason that does the hospital visits and goes and visits the widows for the Widows Fund and does ladies' nights and all those good things. Whereas the rest that are invited participate in these rituals. The main lodges are, particularly the one that our current king is the head of, and the Scottish Grand Lodge seems to be the most prevalent. My handler was part of two lodges. He was a past master and an active master and a very well-loved master for a very long time. And he participated in both lodges. And he was a guest at other lodges in other areas, particularly across Wales and in Scotland. And in that way, he was able to increase his own level of experiences that are participating in the delights of children. And then he was also able to increase his level of fixers across the country. So individuals, fixers and finders, so those that, you know, you would have a brief from somebody and say, well, I would like that particular type of child in that particular area. Could you see what your finders can find? So they're the ones that used to, in the day, go and take pictures of youngsters playing in, you know, in the park or on the swings or whatever. And then they would send that through or say, or phone him and say, well, I think I might have found what you're looking for. You know, this is a red-headed child. It's got green eyes, or, you know, whatever it is that they were looking for specifically, they would then tell him. So he was able to increase his reach. It was bearing in mind the days when all this was happening. There was no such thing as internet and digital and all these good things that we have nowadays. It all had to be done very carefully, clandestinely. And you'd have to, you know, get a knock at the door 10 o'clock at night and somebody would say, we found X, Y, and Z. And then suddenly there would be, oh, I need to go out because Mr. So-and-so's on his deathbed and we need to speak to the widow. And he would disappear with someone. And that was like the cover, if you like.
It's just so mind-boggling how these monsters operate. Now, you mentioned, I'm getting attacked here by this insane puppy. You mentioned King Charles.
Mm.
Quite brazenly, quite openly. And you know, you and I, well, both born in Britain, you know, we know how conditioned and programmed the rest of Britain is, in many people in Britain who are just so obsessed with them because that's the programming. We've been groomed to accept them as hierarchical beings, which they are not. They are just people. So let's go. And if anyone's offended, it's okay. Leave. Just go to and watch something else. You know, we haven't got time for how offended you're going to be when children have been harmed and are still being harmed, and we've got a job to do. All right. So bye. So with all the love in the world. So Beverli, give us some more information, please, on you know, Charlie boy.
Well, there's no surprise that he's the head of specific organizations. So from that point of view, we've got to look at how much does he know, how much of what is happening at some of these lodges is he turning a blind eye to, but yet in his own lodges, what is actually happening in a lot of his own lodges, and how much of that does he know about, and how much of it is he actually aware of? And our family, we were in service to the crown, and my nephew particularly used to be involved with as a groundsman, and he was keeping one of the grounds, making sure everything was running very smoothly. And some of the items that he had seen and some of the unbelievable tortures that he'd witnessed, and he was just a groundskeeper, has left him in a position where, you know, he's very depressed. He has since retired from the properties that he used to look after, but he just can't seem to move past it, and he can't get it out of his head. So it's a very difficult environment to be in because he's signed the National Secrets Act, and he's definitely not allowed to talk about anything that he'd seen on any of those properties, you know, at his king's command. So what we would like to know is how much of it does he know about? And I don't believe that he will actually do anything about anything rather than just pretend to turn a blind eye.
You know, I met him, Charles, once, and you know, like a lot of people, we're all very intuitive. I found him to be absolutely lovely. It was at a gardening event. I was really shocked by his big sausagey fatty fingers. That was a shock. I thought, has he got some kind of thrombosis, or is that the reptoid part trying to stabilize and solidify itself in frequency? Whatever. There's so many rumors. I met Prince Philip as well because I used to play polo, and we were at the Dorchester, and it was a big polo event, and And he had the loveliest, twinkliest eyes in the world and beamed at me and shone light. But they're very good at that. That's the thing as well. They're very good at putting out the, that's why people get offended. Like, oh my God, how could you say that? Well, we're saying it because you've got to stop putting people above you. You've got to stop worshipping and bowing down and kowtowing to. That's how our country got enslaved. That's how the world got enslaved by people being in awe of celebrity and fame and historical godheads. No more. That bollocks has got to end. It's got to end. This is how we get trapped. Oh my God, this popping. It's just go.
Yes, and it is,
Crazy.
it is. I do agree with you. And luckily for me, because of what I had been through during my childhood, when I did the Queen's Diamond Jubilee and we were staying at Windsor Castle, I had my horse at the time, and we'd been told that we were not allowed to go near a particular orchard because that was a very precious area for the Queen. And my mare decided she wanted to go and graze, and we were in between the classes and getting the show ready. And Philip had actually come over in his long rein mac, and because she was a very bright paint mare from America with one blue eye and one brown eye, he just thought that was great. And he came over, he says, "What a lovely pony." And I didn't know who he was. And I just was fascinated by the caterpillar eyebrows. I'd never seen eyebrows like that. My God, they had a life of their own. And he had pony nuts in his pocket. And she decided, right, that's it. He's got pony nuts. I want them. I'm going to have them. So she kept on going over and trying to eat it. And I said, I didn't know who he was. So I never really worried me. I just said, if you've got pony nuts in your pocket, I suggest you give it to her, because she won't stop until you get it out your pocket and give it to her. But he thought this was hysterically funny. And I just treated him like anybody else. And it wasn't until he'd given her a good rub and a pat and she'd had the pony nuts that he walked off to go up to wherever he was towards the castle. And his security detail came over and said, could we have, because we were given these cards, lanyards with our who we are, what stable we were, what number we were in, basically your whole life story. And they came up to me and said, can we have your name, please? And can we do and I said, yeah. And I thought, oh my God. I said, I haven't been near the orchard. First thing, I haven't been near the orchard. Took my lanyard, gave with the stable number we were in, what we were doing, where we were saying, everything. And I said, have I done something wrong? And he said, no. He says, it's just that we just need to know who the prince has been speaking to. I said, what prince? And he said, that you were talking to Prince Philip all this time. And I said, oh, okay. I said, as long as I didn't go near the orchard, I guess I'll be all right, won't I? And he said, yeah, it's all right, don't worry about it. And that was it. So talk about throw your name away. But the good thing was that because there was no airs and graces, and there was no way in which I was kowtowing or showing any reverence or doing a curtsy or anything remotely like that. I just treated him like another being. He actually reciprocated, which was fine. So we don't have to bow and scrape and be silly about these individuals. They're just other beings. That's it, full stop.
Yeah, yeah, so true. I hope that, as Earth progresses, as humanity progresses, that we are more in reverence to a beautiful newborn baby or a foal or a good indigenous leader that has real information to share that we can all grow from, and not how many Rolls Royces and how many cars and all that bollocks, which is just completely vacuous and a nonsense. So yeah, so important to lay our table in that way that, let's say you and I, we don't acknowledge, the program of being in reverence to the knobheads at the top, whoever they might be, and that we want to help people, or I certainly do. Get rid of the triggers. Stop getting triggered. Stop defending people that will never know your name. Stop falling on the sword and dying on the hill, because they don't care and they never will. It's that simple, really. It's so true.
No, they won't ever. That's it. In fact, funnily enough, they believe that it's their right to have individuals lay down their energy, lay down their lives for them. And that in itself is just wrong.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I want to go a few steps back into your childhood because the first years, so your mother was actually your grandmother to you, but she was your real mother, gave you to her younger daughter, who would be your older sister, and they raised you, and you had a really happy start to start with. It was really happy, and then your mother, Christine, had a child, a nightmare child, Tracy, and then you were no more looked at than the cat down the road. Is that a fair
Mm.
assumption?
Yeah, that's a fair assumption. I think because my real mother was around for a very long time, and she used to, we used to go down to the forests, and she knew a lot about the forest and elementals, and she was a healer herself, and she was able to explain all sorts of things, what you'd find in the forest and how. And I was very lucky in as much as I had a lot to do with her for many, many years until it became untenable for them, as in the two that brought me up, because they weren't able to explain away things anymore. It became more difficult. The older a child gets, when a child starts becoming withdrawn and doesn't want to eat, or gets too jittery about things, it becomes very difficult to have. You can't use the same excuse continually. It's not possible. So it became difficult for them to stand together. And then, of course, the pregnancy happened and the other child arrived. So from that point of view, it became inconvenient to be able to come up with reasons for things. So what they then decided to do is that they would make a change. And he had, at the time, he was with an organization that was providing roof tiles, plumbing stuff, and it's like a builder's supply merchant, but one of the biggest ones in the UK. And he'd already started a lot of the work that they'd done to some of the big hospitals. So where he was able to meet with Jimmy Savile and Johnny Savile, they then approached this large organization for Stoke Mandeville and all these other hospitals to see whether they could not only provide at a cost rate, but if they could also donate some of the goods, and so that they could use them and use their skills. And that's what they did in order to make sure that they would be viewed as, these good guys and such a dime, and this is what they're doing. They would find a way then to look good in the public eye. He then decided to apply for a transfer to another region, which would then take us all away, so that my real mother couldn't actually say anything, because she was housebound and she was with everyone else looking after her, and there's no ways that she would have been able to go that length of distance in order to see me.
Yeah, so whisked away to South Africa. Now, until I'd read your book, I'd never even heard of Jimmy Savile, who's one of the sickest, filthiest, foulest monsters that ever walked the earth. He was great friends with everyone at the palace, just so we're, again, company attracts company, like attracts like, deal with it because it's happened. So Jimmy Savile, as you and I know, for those that don't know, had a TV show for children, of course. He'd sit in his red chair and you get a silver medal. Yeah, Jim will fix it for you. Jim will fix your dreams. I wrote to him as a child to be a nursery nurse for the day. I'm glad that my letter never got picked up. Anyway, he did whatever he wanted to old people, disabled children, able-bodied children. He did the worst things in the world. And you mentioned, right, he ate people. You
And
mentioned his,
dead people.
yeah, and dead people. You mentioned his brother Johnny.
Johnny.
I've never heard of that monster either. Please, sorry, it's in the book, so it's here to be shared.
Yeah, so Johnny had a penchant for scat, for poop. And that was, for him it was quite funny, actually, because when I saw what he was doing, I was just absolutely horrified. I've got an odd sense of humor because of it. Anything to do with poops farts or anything remotely like that, and I am in bits. And I attribute it to the fact that I saw him taking a poop on a baby of about 6 or 7 months, maybe a bit more. And that for him was like his absolute turn on, and that enabled him to get his jollies and reach whatever he needed to reach. And I'd never seen that. And unfortunately for me, because it was so absurd, even at that young age, I looked and I thought, you're going to have to go and have a wash. And I started laughing. Big mistake. So yeah, it was one of the PDF parties on the Saturday, and they put a tarp down, and he came along, and he had done this, and I just thought, you dirty soldier, dirty and stinky. And I just thought, we're going to get into trouble because it really smells. And that was all I could think about at the time. I couldn't think about what was happening to me or what was happening to the little baby, because obviously the baby was naked, but it was now covered in poop. And you kind of think, you automatically reflex as an older child, you want to go and help the baby get clean because it's unsanitary. And that was quite a lesson for me, because I got into trouble for laughing, because you shouldn't be laughing in an event like that, especially not when someone's pooping on a baby and getting their jollies from it.
It's absolutely horrific. And there were other men obviously in the room. I mean, that monster, Johnny, as in your book, he got higher because his brother was Jimmy, and Jimmy was in all the hospitals. He had the keys to cities and hospitals. He was doing whatever he wanted. He's running marathons. Again, ugly, ugly, ugly man. Again, we're told, don't say anything, don't say anything. But the evil, you can see it in people like P. Diddy with his little squashed head, his dreadful music, his disgusting, demonic, again, self, whatever. Ugh, these men, I always feel so nauseous, like physically sick talking about them, because there's no word. There isn't a word that's been invented that can encapsulate that level of evil. And yet they were, at the top of the tree to everybody. There was somebody we looked up to. But was he as ugly as Jimmy, his brother, to look at, like a freakoid looking thing?
He wasn't as ugly, the husk, wasn't as ugly as Jimmy Savile, because Jimmy Savile had multiple layers that he enjoyed. He covered a lot of different types of people that he liked to abuse, whereas the Johnny side, he was a little more normal looking on the outside, because he just enjoyed playing with scat, anything to do with poop, and that's it. He was there.
Oh.
So he only had one sort of area that worked for him. The rest of it, for whatever reason, it did not work for him, and he couldn't be bothered with it. So, which is quite odd, but I suppose each to their own, and that worked for him, but that was it. Whereas Jimmy Savile, he had a penchant for all sorts. He liked cadavers and would regularly order one for himself, and he would have children, he would have youngsters, he would have prepubescents, he would, if you were unable to defend yourself, he liked that the most. So disabled youngsters or disabled adults, that was perfect for him. And that was the biggest thing. We looked at him as more of a soul stealer than anything else, because he had been able to understand the knack of being present and being able to utilize that energy for himself. But I think towards his end, he wasn't able to absorb that energy anymore, which is why he went downhill so quickly.
Many things have been said about that monster. And one of the worst, again, if your kids are in the room, get them out, because apparently one of the people that he harmed had a glass eye, and he had that glass eye removed and made into a ring that he wore on his finger. But it's not a surprise. It's so sick to think someone would do that. But at that level of evil, Absolutely. And of course, none of us normal could bring to mind the
Mm.
atrocities. And then you hear about it and be like, holy God, wow. And imagine the joke of it, the reality, and this was proven over and over and over again. Savile was actually being considered to advise Prince Charles and Princess Diana in their marital. And that sick, twisted mofo lived with mummy at home. It also begs the question, what kind of upbringing did Jimmy and Johnny, whatever other kids were there, have to be such twisted sickos? And again, we can't have compassion. I don't, because other people go through horror and they choose not to be monsters. So, again, bringing it down to ground level or sewage level below, below the drains where they belong.
Yeah.
But yeah, what
Mhm.
are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Well, I know that he used to talk a lot to my fixer and my handler. They used to talk a lot about their relationship with their mums, and the joke was always, well, mum would have liked this, that sort of thing. And the funny thing was that the word the Duchess is the person that brought me up was also referred to as the Duchess. So they tend to have these individuals around them that have a very high opinion of themselves, rightly or wrongly so. But they also had an incestual type of relationship with the people that brought them up. So there's
Uh,
no doubt that the Savile person had an incestuous relationship with his mother because of the way that he was going forward.
yeah. Let's mention the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, stacked from cellar to roof of pedos. And it's been proven the DJs, the actors, the speakers, the show hosts, it's all coming
Mm.
out. It's all coming out. Be very afraid. I know there are people, Beverly, they'll go, oh my God, that was my uncle, my dad, my granddad, my this, my that. But it's not about you, darling. It's not about you. But the monsters that harmed, they will be named. There is no escape. Beverly, over to you. BBC.
Well, BBC, I was trafficked a lot to the BBC, particularly during visits into the country. They they seem to, because they all, I don't know how they did in those days. I guess they probably used to phone each other or do something similar, but they always knew when there was sort of a particular favorite blood coming into the country, or whether there was something coming in from somewhere that they wanted. And there was always a way to be taken in through the back, where all the props were, if you, that was sort of their favorite entry area. And you would come through there, and then you would end up further up on the polished floors, great for skidding on. I used to like skidding on them. Not allowed to do that, but nonetheless. So I digress. Running along and skidding along the polished floors, lots of fun. And you're still a child, but you're not allowed to do these things to enjoy yourself. And then be dropped off to the various dressing rooms. So the dressing rooms had the usual suspects in them, and you would then sort of have a, not a feeding frenzy, but they would know that a particular handler was on his way. They would know. How they knew, I don't know, but I think there was this underground system amongst those in that building that would know, we've got so and so, he's coming, and he's bringing us sweeties, or he's bringing us whatever. Maybe you would like to participate in the latest cookies or the latest whatever. They have all their own passwords. They have all their own little special nods that they do, so that if you were part of the groovy gang, you would then know what is being said. If you weren't part of the groovy gang, you would just consider, oh, there's cake, they're going to leave cake over there for us, we can go and have some free cake, type of thing. And that's all they would think of it. So they would know that he was going to bring whatever was necessary. And then those that wanted a piece of the action would make sure that they were either in a dressing room, and that dressing room was watched to make sure it wasn't disturbed, or they would say, well, we're too busy right now. if you would like that particular piece of cake, then tell us when you're going to be available, and we'll make sure that you can get whatever. You tell me what you want and I'll get it for you.
Mhm. Oh, there's such difficult subjects to talk about. And imagine that there's little beautiful, innocent angel babies, just being used in that way. And so I want to keep a little bit of focus on on the monsters that do this. They did that, they have done it, and they are still doing it. Okay, so we mustn't forget. So back to when you were growing up and your foul Patrick Rhodes pretend father was taking your knickers, your little knickers, your underwear, and selling your underwear that you'd been wearing on your person, you know, and selling it to his friends. Dirty, 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 and other things, and that fully grown men, running their homes and their good jobs, and in the 60s and 70s, and they're doing but they're doing these terrible things to children. And they can't possibly imagine, even though they're now in their 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, that they're going to get away with it. Just because you're old, mate, doesn't mean you're going to get away with it. Oh, but I've turned to God. And what's your point? Confessions of the pedo priests and confessions of the, all it means, when they're harming, let's say the pedo priest, for example. Oh, damn it. Colin got caught again, did he? Yes, well, we moved him up, 600 miles away to a nice little parish in Wales. We'll go to Wales in a minute, you and me, Beverly. In Wales, yeah. We told him, Colin, stop getting caught. And again, religion, it's coming down because it has to. Because the monsters at the top, your popes, your bishops, your shirt-lifting cardinals, your Jesuits, they need a good old beating and a sit down and a come to Jesus and a come to love. And we're going to be so shocked, more than we have been, at the names coming out, the people coming out, because they're going to be so scared, they're going to start voluntarily coming forward. That's my intuition on that. What's yours, my love?
Yeah, I think they will, but I do think there's a lot of individuals that perhaps now realize the error of their ways, and they're going to try for whatever they have left for the rest of their lives to make good as best they can, because the day of reckoning will be coming, and I wouldn't want to be in their shoes, that's for sure, because stealing an innocent and stealing the energy and vibrations and frequencies from an innocent is one of the biggest sins that you can actually undertake in the prison planet that we're on at the moment. So, they've got a lot to atone for. And if they do come forward, at least then they can purge and cleanse their souls to a degree, but the payment will still become due.
Yeah, absolutely. Wales, I'm quarter Welsh. I'm very proud of that. I think Wales is one of the most beautiful countries in the entire world planet. And I've lived in several different countries. It's such a beautiful place. And there are some very, very dark, dark, dark corners in Wales, aren't they, my love? Can you share a little bit about your knowledge of Wales, parts of it?
Well, there seems to be an underbelly. It's probably the best way. On the surface, I think the people are absolutely lovely, and they absolutely don't know that there is a force underneath the belly of whales that is working really hard to keep silent, but more and more so, they're utilizing that energy to feed this very strong underbelly. And I've been working for quite some time with there's two extremely lovely, there's a priest and there is a couple of church ministers that have been working with me, because they don't always understand what they're looking at. So what they do is they say, I'm going to send you this, tell me what I'm looking at, because I don't know what I'm looking at. So I'm trying to educate them to say, this is it. And what I'm saying to them is, when I put the comments on, print it out and put it in a book somewhere, because then at least you can pass that around the various individuals and police organizations and say, if you see this, this is what it means. And then through education and knowledge, because knowledge is power, they will then be able to say, well, actually, I know what we're looking at because this police officer over in that, Carnarvon or wherever it was, he said it's this, this, and this. And then that makes it a lot easier because then they can join the dots. And that will then expose the underbelly.
You mean the symbols? You're talking about symbology and clues and like over here, pedo parties over here. And can you be a little bit more specific, just to people that have never heard of this kind of, talking before? And so take your time, because again, it's not easy conversations to have at all. And we're not, coming down hard on Wales. I love Wales. When I was at college, I used to stay, I was a nanny, so I do part-time nannying while I was at college. And I stayed in a beautiful teeny tiny village called Manorty. You got me coughing now. It's catching. Yeah, Wales is stunning, beautiful, beautiful. So go ahead.
So it's not just the symbolism and the signs that are left for the pedo parties, but it's also the signs that are left to show when there's going to be one of the SRA rituals happening, and the prep that goes into the SRA parties, because it's not just human beings. We have our lovely four-legged friends as well. And there is a lot of prep that goes into lifting, moving, collecting, deciding which particular horse or which particular bullock or which particular beast is going to be chosen to be part of sacrificial rituals. So there's that I also have been trying to educate them and say, if you see, a horse in the field that has a long plait, and usually when they're in the field, they're quite unkempt and they've been allowed to run free for the winter. If there's one that has these long plaits suddenly appear in its mane, it says a sign. And don't allow those signs to go unnoticed. Take that horse, put it into the barn, bring it in, and keep it safe, because it's probably been tagged as one to be utilized, because otherwise one day you're going to go out and that horse won't be there anymore. It'll be gone. And you'll never find it because it would have been utilized in a ritual, chopped up and consumed. It's pretty much the same as what they do to the youngsters. It's the same situation. And this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to educate individuals, both in the police force and in the clergy and others, social workers, etc., because there seems to be a lot happening in isolated areas, because that seems to be where they're safest.
So very difficult and so very sad. And again, it could be an innocent little girl that's done her horse's mane and tail in a plait, now obviously people are going to look more, but attention is better than, being completely in the dark. So we'll be very careful, of course, out there to people that do see a horse in a field with a plait. But as Beverli says, it is one of the ways that they tag an animal for a ritual that's coming up. Excuse me. There's so many different ways to go here. I know that you are very much an adept in remote viewing, and you and I have another friend in common, and that's our beautiful Tony Rodriguez. He's such a great man, and he had a blind target. And so he just went with what he got, the numbers. I mean, I've done one of his classes before, and he's there. And basically, I came up in it because it was the UFO flyover, although they weren't unidentified flying saucers, they were identified spacecraft at my conference, Galactic Spiritual Informers, where Elena Danan had called in and arranged a fleet of spacecraft from off planet to come and a military TR-3B to fly over, proving that the two factions are working together. And it's so beautiful. Tony got it, but you know what else is so great? This should be world news. And right now, it isn't. But don't worry, because I'm calling them all out. Joe Rogan, Piers Morgan, all the big names, all of them. Like, oi, get yourself over here. We've got to bring this together. We've got to land this plane. And it will be global news, because I'm not stopping and neither is anybody else. But my point is, Tony, I mean, can you imagine? There's 1,000 people that saw the UFOs in the sky, diving, bombing us, like with beautiful green lights flashing. It was amazing. It was euphoric. And we
Mm.
said the day, the time over the hotel, and it's being ignored. Well, you got a few idiots out there trying to say it wasn't this and it wasn't that. Go away. Infiltrators. But anyway, Tony Rodriguez was then given the target and he nailed it. But it was beautiful because he unfortunately was used as a child in satanic Illuminati, drug muling, etc. And it's so lovely to know that you also, in your remote viewing abilities, you guys have come together and you've connected because he was quite and made a good impression on you, didn't he?
Yes, he did. And I chose him particularly to speak to him because when I was working through my next book and what I needed to say, I spoke to him before he was, well, just after he'd launched his first book, and I spoke to him because I wanted to make sure that we would be safe, and that also the areas that I will be discussing, particularly the slave and return cycles, I wanted to make sure that he felt that it was safe enough now for us to say what we needed to say. And I had a long discussion with him about the book and what I'd been through, and it turns out we know a lot of very similar people off world, and there's a lot of synergies between his area of education and my area of education, and the things that we are meant to be doing in this lifetime, so that we're able to educate individuals. And if they listen, great. If they don't listen, they'll get it next time.
One of the things that's so wonderful about you connecting with my beautiful friend Tony Woodriggs, I do love me some Tony. He's spoken at every single G6 so far, and he's so important. And I've watched him gain a superiority within himself over his material and his experiences, because obviously he's come from such a horrendous, awful
Mm.
situation. And now he's just like, no, this is who I am, and the years before I'd be like bashing him and saying, Tony, don't you get it? Don't you get how important you are? Your information is so important because it crosses the negative military, the negative satanics, and the negative ETs. I didn't know anyone else at that time that crossed all those systems because, again, my point, Beverly, when I'm banging off, when I'm saying don't even think about respecting authority, is recognize every single system is infiltrated. It's all of them all together doing everything they shouldn't, and
Yeah.
we're no longer at their mercy at all. Listen, I know that we're going to do a part two, you and I. And then I think in part two, what we could do, we could even get Tony to jump on with this.
Oh, that would be
And
nice. It'd be good to
yeah,
see Tony.
yeah.
Because I think when we had a discussion, we had lots of fun about. Do you remember this? Have you seen that? Did you see this? Did you see that? What level have you been down to underground and in the deep the dams? Level 6, level 7. All those sort of things. I think that was the most exciting, because when we start writing things down and we realize just what we've seen and how we've seen it, there is this level of, because we're so conditioned not to be believed. That's my phone.
That's all right.
uh, and I don't have to answer it, but I think pause it. Sorry.
So yes, it'll be great to get you and Tony together and
I
share.
think that'll be lots of fun because we bounce off each other, and he has fantastic energy, and at least we've both been able to now cope with what we went through, take a good look at it and do a knees up, a real deep dive, and get as much of the information out as we need to, which is part of our soul contract, really, is to make things matter and make a difference, which I think we're both doing in different spheres.
Oh my God, you so are. You so are. And again, what is good, if there is ever such a word that you could use against what's happened to the two of you, but what is good is that naming the actual military programs, like the one he was in, Project Grill Flame, where they tortured children to the point of death, or they would just, the doctor would take them in the back room and break an arm, break a leg, and just see how they, horrendous, horrendous. But he lived through it. He remembered it. He recovered his memories. He's doing great work in the field. We had him on stage just a couple of months ago in Colorado, in America, and he was again giving his advanced information on remote viewing, now from a little child to now a free man, with the advancements in it. And it's a very important science. And I think again, what's beautiful is that people like him and you're putting the correct protocol into the field. You've got these silly wannabe have a go. They're on the galactic train, they're on the SRA train, and because there are people that want to be famous on the back of others, and they're awful, awful, experiences. But they make things up, and then people go and do a course with them. And what are they doing? They're disinforming, and they're not allowing the person to fully access their own beautiful scientific consciousness of technology that exists within these vessels. So it's so great there are strong leaders like you and Tony Rodriguez out there out there in the field. So we'll do more on him later. And again, I do want to honor the book and honor your work on so many different levels. And I was really disheartened. I mean, it's a hard read. It is a hard read, but I was more disheartened that with all the filthy men that go into the Masonic lodges and that enjoy your underwear, and that your, awful dad was selling them, that you were unable to leave everything that you have in the book. And there were many things in your book that were removed. There's a panel of people who read it and they decided that you couldn't leave certain things in. And, it's disappointing because aren't the things bad enough here? I mean, there's already terrible things in the book that happen to you and other children, mostly by men, in these high positions in society. Why did they not allow information? And can you share some of that information? Are you okay?
I'm okay. Yeah, it's just a coughing fit, that's all.
All right, darling.
I think that they, as publishers, they were, because the original book was a no holds barred, because I felt that the information just needs to get out there. But I think that they felt after the second round of editing, they just felt that it would be too much for the public to actually read. And that's why they said, particularly, what was going on in the dungeons and the bestiality particularly, they said, that is extremely offensive, and they wanted that removed. And I said, but you've got to realize that this is an integral part of what is happening. And since now we know about that particular island, with the domed unit on it,
Epstein's Island.
That one, there was a lot happening. That's exactly what would have been in the book, but then was removed. And then also with the tunnels across all of America, LA, going up into the mountains in Hollywood, there are whole areas that are set aside just for that. Just for that. That's what they do. And that is, they sell tickets for it, for goodness sake. It's like if you can imagine cage fighting, same thing, with a difference. So I feel that it was a bit of a disservice, but the choice was we either remove it or we don't publish it. So I said, well, okay, take it out. But then I said to them, please make sure with my ghostwriter, make sure that she reads it to see if it can flow better. Because if you take that out, there's like really key bits of the story and the information that will be missing. Particularly like the young girl that was next to me who didn't survive. She was taken and put in the middle of the floor, which is what they do. And part of that whole environment is just to see how far they can go. And unfortunately for her, she was older than me. And at that point, I think that her little body was so frail that she just couldn't anymore, and she expired. So it that sort of thing is key, because when you listen to the testimony of the witnesses, and when you read some of the indictments, and you read some of the pieces of information, the snippets that are coming out, and I have actually had discussions with two individuals that are direct witnesses in cases with the Diddy case. And I think they were just so pleased to be able to talk through their truth, because they're so upset about people just not believing them. And then when I was able to add, pieces of information to them that I know happens because I was there, you can just see the emotional release of these poor people, because there is somebody else much older than they are who went through it before they did, but it's never stopped, and can say, well, this happened and that happened. Were they doing the same thing at the time? Were they, oh yeah, they were. And you can see that they realize by the things I'm saying, I've been there, I've seen it, and they're still doing it. And this is how they do it, and this is how it works. And you can see them realize, well, actually, she knows I'm telling the truth. And that to them is more than worth $1 million to them, because there is somebody, even if it's only one person, believes them. They have that level of belief now.
Yeah, our darling Gloria Masters, she, her business is, handing back the shame, or handing the shame back. Because it's never the shame of the little victim, or however old a victim is. It's never, ever, ever theirs. It's the shame
Yeah.
on the dirty monster that did that to them. And it is a wonderful thing. And it is very difficult for people to come out, and they're so scared. They should be way less scared now. And, details are important, and small details of, say, a birthmark, a tattoo, an odd shaped penis, like Epstein, apparently that filth had a really odd, or, a lot of men have little teeny tiny, like baby finger penises, a lot of them. And they all get really aggressive and mean because they're so inadequate. I forget there's one in particular in Kathy O'Brien's book, very, very senior high politician. I forgot him now. I'd say his name if I could remember it, but I can't at this moment. But it's telling people, adults and children, don't be afraid. Do not be afraid. There are too many of us stepping out and standing up for ourselves, for ourselves, for our families, for our souls, for the souls of other, for the souls of the lost ones that are no longer physically here. And we have a duty of care. Number one to self, though. Number one to self, and the healing in oneself. I had to slap a woman verbally because she claims to be in the SRA. I can't imagine anybody would claim and not actually be.
Why would you
Right.
want to? For goodness sake, I wouldn't want to go there.
Because some people just want to be famous, and they're messing up, they're disinforming in the SRA field, or the PDF pedophile field. And to this woman, we had to throw her out. The security guards tossed her out of our conference because she was becoming unhinged, but desperate. And she approached me, and I remember thinking, oh, poor woman. That's my first thought. I thought, oh, poor woman, she's really like jittery and I've said to everyone that comes to a conference, you're going to get triggered. Your demons are going to get rattled. Whatever darkness is in you is going to, it's an opportunity for growth, as well as hearing people's testimonies on certain things. Yeah, so I forget my point now. But anyway, so I had to really just give her a bit of a smack and say, if you continue lying about these great women, she'll probably come for you too now. She's seen you, her and her cronies. But, Kathy O'Brien and Rachel Vaughan and Gloria Masters and Jeanette Archer and Max Lowe. And this same woman is going after these, why? And that happened to me on a different level. And so now I'm kicking ass and I'm taking names. And again, you got to make a stand. I really do think this, Beverly, at this point for me and what I'm doing on my mission to support humanity, you name the names, you say the things. I said to that woman the nutty one. If you carry on any more, I'm posting your photograph of you losing it at the conference, you
That's a
silly
good
cow.
one.
Yeah, and I'll
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I'll say, it's like enough, just stop it. Because now that the top layers are so terrified, you've got all the other survivors or whatever, and they're all again dying on the sword, falling on the
Mm,
sword and dying on the hill for people that will never give a shit about them.
they won't, not at all.
And these people um, need to really be taking care of themselves, their mental health and their healing, like really truly,
But
and
mental
see.
health doesn't actually provide a safe enough environment to be able to discuss this. And some of the mental health areas do not even acknowledge that these sort of things exist. So how can we help individuals when some of the practitioners don't even acknowledge that these types of environments and rituals and these types of places in big houses underneath in dungeons and places set aside for these types of events, they don't even acknowledge that this happens. So how can we start healing and helping individuals when we're not even prepared to validate their story and say, yes, I believe you, because and that's why they won't come forward. And then it comes out in other ways.
Mm. But that's another reason why you and the other ladies I mentioned already are so important because you really are standing on, you are leading edge people who've experienced these horrors,
Mm.
and yet you have the courage to stand and share, and name the
And I
names,
think
name the places.
it's and that's what we have to do because it's going to be the evidence. And I think it's no surprise that at my late years that I've decided to talk about what needs to be talked about, because who knows how much time one has got left. I've already done 3 tape sessions with the police in a video suite, mainly because there's a couple of folks that are going to probably be charged in the UK, and they were part and parcel of the same group that was being serviced. And we were ferried here and there, and they were the 2 lads that were with me were in the same cab at the time. So, and there's quite a few that went to the same video suite to give their video testimony. So that sort of thing, plus the photographic evidence I've handed all that over. But then also my attorney has got most of it locked away very safely. So at the end of the day, I do think it's going to take a while for all of this to get through the courts, but at least I've left video testimony. They can use that if I'm much later in my life, if something happens, they can use it and they've got it. So people do need to start thinking about, maybe if they don't want to come out in public or they don't want to say something, they need to leave some sort of evidence behind so that it can shed light on what is actually happening.
Mhm.
Because
Mm.
if you don't say anything, it still enables them, and it means that you're still living in shame, and you don't have to live in shame because it wasn't your fault.
Yeah, exactly. It was never your fault. There wasn't one thing you did to attract that monster to you, not one. And adults are very good at twisting and manipulating. It's like you and
Oh, oh
your
yes.
your horse, Humbug, Hummy, your beautiful horse
Hummy.
that you love so much, and your dad would know that if the threat of not seeing your horse was just worse than death to you because that was the
Mm.
only escape you had. And can you share a little bit about your connection with the
Oh,
horses? Because
my
it is
poor
the
old boy. Yeah, well, I'd been bugging and bugging and bugging and bugging for that horse for a long time, and I'd asked and asked and asked and asked, and he was very clever. He managed to find a way that he would always be able to manipulate how I was going down the stables, and he then made an arrangement with the owners that he would physically build in his spare time. He would build stables, and then if we were to find a horse that was right for me, he would then utilize his skills as an artisan to build the stables so that Humbug could be in a stable without any fees. but then that also meant that he had another level of power over me that he didn't have before, because let's face it, he'd already killed off a number of cats and dogs and other lovely animals. But that this beautiful animal would then, I would do anything to make sure that Humbug would be fine. So he had another layer of control. And even if I was hiding in the barn, inside all the prickly hay bales, which I made myself my own little castle inside there, even if I was hiding in there, he would just go and collect him and start walking past, and I would hear Hummy. And I think, oh, sure, but he's taking Hummy. Where's he taking? What's he going to do? And I'd come out straight away. So, dead clever, very manipulative. And at the end of the day, anyway, him and her, they decided at the end of it, because I was getting a bit too cocky and not doing what they wanted, they ended up getting rid of the horses. I just went to the stables one day, they were both gone. So I did pay eventually, because I didn't do as I was told. So that's how they are. And they don't have respect for anything other than themselves and money and the power that being able to represent children and get away with it, more importantly, and get away with it. And all that energy, because people would know them and you'd see them walking down the street and they would bow and nod their heads at them, and you would know, okay, how soon is it going to be that I'm going to be taken to that one? How soon is it going to be that those are going to end up in the main lounge of the house? Because they used to have all sorts of parties at the house too. So it is always a payment, and you always know at the end of the day, they're the adults. You do as you're told.
Your escape was beautiful. I was cheering, when you just one day were like, fuck it, and left and just became a young adult, independent very quickly, and just got to grips with your life. And then, oh my God, in the book, the July 7th, the bombing on the underground, and you're trapped in an underground tube train. Horrendous.
Yeah, here we go again.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And the bit where I tell you, I burst into tears because as I'm reading it, I can hear your voice, I can feel your energy through the book. There was a point where the bomb has gone off and the train is stuck underground in London, and you have been your face is smashed in, your teeth are gone, your jaws, everything is a mess. You've been unconscious for 12 and a half minutes. You're struggling to find a door, a way out. There's a carriage on fire next door to you, and someone cries out, and you said, it's gonna be okay. And I just like,
Yeah.
but I'm like, of course she was the one saying that. This angel in the dark, all bent up, all, at death's door, and the way you escaped. And it's just, wow. I mean, and there's so much, I mean, what a life you have lived thus far. And now, I feel there's going to be some of the greatest rewards, some of the most wonderful feelings of just this salvation and light, because not only are you standing up for the little girl that you were and are, all the other children, and they're taking down of the monsters and naming them. And you mentioned so many things. You mentioned that the sneakiness of the adults, where in the plumbing world, oh, we've got to take out the bathroom, or we've got to, send the wife and kids away, and then the house is empty for hours on end. And that's when you'd have all the children would come and be ritually harmed, and they'd be, oh, there's a party, kid party, come on over, oh my God. You mentioned
they're very clever. They're so clever, and people don't even think about it, because they've got their own cleaning crew. So, like after the shitter, there is a mess, but there is a crew that you can call the cleaning crew. And after everybody has taken their money and taken the children back, and these are caregivers and individuals that, look after children who go to parties, and whatever's mess is left behind, they'll get the cleaning crew to come in. And, he used to make sure that there was no way that when the wife and the children of the home, after they'd finished renovating the bathroom or putting the new floor down or whatever, they would come back and they would not know anything even happened. Not a clue, because the front room would be spick and span and clean. The whole house would smell of that awful glue of sticking the floor down, which stinks to high heaven. And there's no surprise that this awful smell is there, because that will definitely cover up any smell of sexual activity or poo that's been around. That is really stinky, and that stays in the property for days, because it, until it dries properly under a floor. So they're so organized. You can't actually consider what they're capable of until you actually see it happening. It's mind-boggling, their capabilities.
Yeah. There's no level of manipulation that they won't or haven't stooped to. It's that simple. You mentioned briefly the dungeons. Were you talking mainly about the dungeons in and around London, or any other parts of Wales, or anywhere in particular? I know you mentioned LA, but anywhere in the UK, around the BBC, etc., under London?
Well, there's lots that lead off the Thames, which are commonly used, but only at low tide, I think, because you can get in there. And there's some specific traditional families that know of these areas, but they are in the know and they're sworn to secrecy, so they won't do anything about it. Then you've also got down in the Plymouth region, Plimpton region, and then all the way along the coast area, all the way up through the coastal area, up to Wales, going into Scotland, and as far up as Skegness even. There's a lot of very well-known dungeon type parties where bestiality and PDF parties are still happening to this day, and you get a lot of people coming from mainland Europe. They tend to know when these are taking place, and it can be at any time, and it's usually when they know that they're going to have access to the types of children, both boys and girls, as well as disabled children too, believe it or not, that are all part of this, because they all have a different price on their heads. So depending on what they are, the different price will be the different types of events that would be made available. And this is all now, I haven't seen the dark web, but I'm led to believe that these events are very well advertised on the dark web. And you can put in bids for particular children, and you can buy a child if you want. I mean, I think the current rate is it's not too bad. It's about £150,000. You can buy a child if you want one. And this is happening. So it hasn't stopped. It's still ongoing. It's just far more accessible now worldwide than it was before.
People are wondering, well, where are the parents? Well, they kidnap girls off the street and use them as breeders, and they breed them over and over and over and over and over again, unfortunately. And again, yeah, all this will come to light. Our friend Tony Rodriguez, well, when he was kidnapped by the guy, Richard, who owns a big house, he's a satanic in Seattle. Tony went there. He actually went there. He remembers so much. Another failing of the so-called elite, the deletes, they failed in their assumption, their arrogance that the children would forget. Well, the children didn't forget. Children don't forget everything, as you well know. But when he was chained by the neck with other little boys and little girls at these sex parties, he found out that the party goers, the adults, the men and women, would come in and they could just choose a child and do whatever,
Yep,
like literally right. Whatever, even ending that child's physical existence.
There's a lot of snuff that happens. Luckily, I only witnessed one, and in my rather immature mind, I thought that person can't be unalive. That's just not possible. And I thought, any minute now, that person is going to stop moving and will be okay. Didn't happen. That person was definitely unalive. And that was the one time that I witnessed that. And I just thought, how is that possible? Then I realized, whereas before we were fed and washed or hosed down, it was a case of thinking, well, this is going to stop at some point. But I never thought that they would get to a point where they actually created an environment where someone would be in a place that they could absolutely expire. And that was, I think, a big revelation for me to think, hang on a minute, these people are serious. Not only are they hurting us, but if we don't play along, we will expire.
It's just so
And
awful.
that was a big thing for me.
Oh, God. Well, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm so sorry all of it happened to you. I remember in Tony's book series Colony Cavalier, him sharing, and I also asked him, because we're friends, as you know, and he witnesses this evil satanic Richard wearing the pig head or the devil, whatever mask, mask, him and his wife and someone else. And there's a little boy and they've opened his chest, he's been unalived. And it was like if Tony did or said anything, it would be him next kind of thing. So these poor
Yeah,
children
true.
not only witness, but then you like have this guilt, like what didn't happen to me? Well, oh my goodness. Back to the children being chained by the neck and their party favors,
Mm.
they were told the people at the party off their heads on drugs, etc. They were told that these children weren't real children, that they were clones. They weren't clones. But you see the degree of separation mentally in a drugs fueled person that thinks, oh, well, it's not going to hurt them. They're not real. They were real. They are
Mm.
real. And I
That's
know that.
the most common, that is the most common excuse, is because most clones are soulless creatures. Some of them don't have any souls at all, particularly those that are just created as a party favor. Yes, there are a few that are like that, but there's very obvious. You can see they don't have a soul. There's nothing rattling around in there. And that is one of the most common things that they do. And they still are doing that at the moment, is they do find a way to create a party favor of a particular type of child that is very popular. So, and they do still do that, but there are, for the majority of those that are provided through the breeders, because there's still a lot of breeding points out there. And out of the 300,000 that have disappeared, they are creating more beings, and they are participating in genetic reprogramming, where they'll put one particular type of being or human with another so that they can create a similar type of bloodline. What is very popular is O negative, because only 4% of the planet is O negative and has a negative Rh negative. So they will specifically, and this was happening even in my day, they will make sure that they put the rhesus negative with rhesus negative, because there are those that are running these baby factories. They know what sells more. Just as much as we know with diamonds, there are diamonds that are worth a lot more than colored diamonds that are not worth as much. So they know what needs to be bred in order to meet the market's needs and requirements. And this is still going on. So yeah, I agree with Tony. But the problem is that at the time, I think we all had a level of, oh gosh, I survived. And you do have a level of survivor's guilt.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh my goodness. Well, listen, dearest darling Beverli Rhodes, this has been harrowing, fascinating, devastating, beautiful because of so many highlights that you had. Journey into your life. And, we already planned we'll be doing a part two. And what I would love to do is invite the people that see this broadcast to leave their questions in the comment section, not in the live chat, guys. We're not going to the live chat. It disappears. And so in the comment section, leave your question. And the next time that you and I come together, Beverli, then we will, ask the audience, we'll go through their questions. Before we do go, just want to say that I've really, really enjoyed seeing you on Sean Atwood's channel several times now. You're quite the hit over there, my love.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit, sometimes I do give him a bit of a shock because I'm quite outspoken about things, and I say it as it is because at this stage I think it's nothing to lose, because we're all in a phase where we're awakening. So, and Sean's very good in as much as he will just be. He allows me to be, and he will allow whatever comes out to come out because he believes it's the right time, which is great.
I see his new logo is Bigfoot and a little alien. I'm like, right, I've been emailing with him for over 2 years. So I feel like he's had Dr. Michael Sala on, he's had Elena Danan on, but other people interviewing them. But I feel like now he's ready. And for his channel, the focus on like Jaguar Right, let's say, because every single system is connected. So the
Yep.
Diddy, the negative ETs, the satanics, the witches, the warlocks, all through the military, all connected. And now Jaguar's going to come out with more information on that side, the other side. And then
Yes.
everyone's going to say, oh my God, Danny Anderson was banging on forever saying all the systems are connected, as you were, as
And they
others do.
are.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and this is it. It's time now, and this particularly next year, and up until May, the energies and frequencies that are happening, they are increasing to such a feverish point that those particular months we're going to see all sorts of systems coming down, where the shock level of the people that we're going to see, that we are never going to believe that those individuals have that level of negative energy with them. It's going to be totally eye-opening, but it's necessary as we move into the next dimension. It's necessary that we shed all of this awful three-dimensional negativity. It needs to go so that we can all move towards the ascension period.
Absolutely. And the dark demons that they've exchanged, the humans in the human vessels, the big names,
Mm.
etc., many of them, as we know, they're demons. They won't be able to abide in the vessel. The frequency that we're moving into, it is unsustainable, unsustainable. So yeah, it's fascinating. And yeah, this has been I told people like last year, this 2024 will be the biggest like bang into disclosure because it was so frustrating. 2020, 2021, 2022. I was like, oh my God, 2023. And I'm like,
Mm.
this is the year. So for me, this has been the biggest year so far. And the rate, like you just said, the acceleration, of the light and the things coming out and the this and the that. And people are going to go, they're just going to be so like faint with, oh my God, I never imagined this person or that person. Well, best you start because you're going to see them all being lined up and they are going to be accountable for their crimes against humanity. Beverly Rhodes,
And
let
I
me
think I think a lot of them will decide to rather vacate the planet because I don't think, because they know what's coming. I don't think they won't want to face what they need to face. So it's their choice. If they lay down the husk and the body and decide to go, that's up to them. But they will at some point have to pay for whatever they've done.
I mean, it will be a very good thing in some ways for them to get over themselves, their families, their egos, the threats, the conditions, the deals, the selling of the soul. Just get out there, start talking. There
Yes,
just might be a little bit of
absolutely.
exoneration somewhere, right? Somewhere. Let me come
Yeah.
to you for last words. What would you, because we
Yeah.
would have triggered, people are going to it's awful. The content we've discussed is just the worst content ever imaginable. How, and not that it's our job, we've warned people, we're not here to wipe noses, we're here to be loving, but we got to get real now. But how would you like to leave the audience that will see this, with your kind of last words on the subject matters that we've discussed today?
Yeah, I think if you feel that you've been triggered, the most important message I can give is start honoring your truth and believe yourself. Because if you're not triggered, then we know there's nothing in your past and there's nothing that's deep and buried. Because if you are triggered, then there's something there. Don't push it down and say, oh, it can't be, it can't be, it can't be. because those are the ones that get away. And that means there's something in there that you need to go and have a look at. So sit quietly, take a deep breath, and say to yourself, why am I triggered? What is this bringing up for me? And then get some help with people that are professionals out there that know how to very carefully and in a kind, respectful way start looking at what is it in your past that might be buried. And it does get buried rather deep. I mean, mine was buried. It took the 2005 7/7 London bombings being knocked out. It took that for me to suddenly start remembering everything and have it coming back. And that's years and years and years and years. So it is possible that yours could be buried. Doesn't mean to say it didn't happen. So be kind to yourself and then start looking at it.
Yeah, beautiful. It makes me sad sometimes when people are like, was I in a secret space program? Because there's something about that they want to feel a connection. But this could have been something way different, but a trigger is there nonetheless. So people must be careful with what they go looking for, in this trending galactic, environment that people want to be connected to. So, and God, God bless them all. Everyone's on a healing journey. The Horse Girl, I highly recommend this. Again, it is not an easy read, but it is a journey that Beverly Rhodes has lived to. This goes up to around 2013, doesn't it? 2013, 2014.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, of your life. And then you're writing again, and there's going to be another book coming out. And gosh, you are so fascinating. You're one of the most fascinating people, I would say, on the circuit, if you want to call it that, on the disclosure of everything. At the moment. And I love how people are just finding you and that you're being received so beautifully and you're so important as a voice on our planet right now. So I can't wait.
I think it's going to be good because the next book is more about Earth School and where we came from, and it's talking a lot about I've got it down as next level disclosure Earth School, because I think when I started looking at the types of blood types and then the DNA and realized that part of that channeled information and things that Da'ar has shown me, there is absolutely no way that creationism works, and there's absolutely no way that we are stemmed from monkeys. So when we
Oh,
start looking at that, Darwinism, we would either be an A blood group or a B blood group. So gorillas, apes, etc. And there's no ways that we could be from one male and one female, the Adam and Eve, because of the amount of different types of blood groups. So I go into that and poo-poo a lot of it. So I think I'm going to have a lot of flack with that going forward. But then because I was taken very young, I think because of what was happening to me. And I think that the individual that has seen me through all of my life, Da'ar, he's been one of those that at least has been the single most stable being throughout my whole life. And that is now part of the book, is what he's shown me, what, the different types of things that I've seen, and I've basically, it's going to be a large collection of all my conversations with him, where I've asked him, well, what about this? What about that? And all of the questions are in there, and then what he's answered. And then again, another question and an answer. And that's all in the book, and all of the areas that I've worked with over South Africa and some items in Greece and in China and all those things. Everything that I've done, pretty much my life's work, is in the new book.
Fascinating. The idea for people, it's so hard for them to let go of the religion and the story in the Bible because that's what they've been told from a child. And then the threat of going to hell is always attached as a death threat in the Bible to every person that dares to question, and it's as simple as that. And that's a reality. And they say that there's so many space arcs and that Noah's Ark was a literal craft and it was DNA samples, not the animals marching two by two. Hurrah,
Exactly.
hurrah.
Yeah, that's right. That
Yeah.
is exactly what Da'ar has said, because when I was shown the historical values through the mirror, I said, but hang on a minute, that's not the arc that we know. And he just said, no, it's not. He said, this is DNA splicing at its best, and it's come from this planet, that planet, etc., all these different planets. And that's what we use to terraform different planets across the various known universes. And I said, well, then how often have you done this? And he said, well, more than you know. At the moment we've got 390 planets that they're terraforming. I said, oh, I guess you kind of know what you're doing then.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And you, Beverly Rhodes, are incredible. Thank you so much for gracing
Thank
my
you.
channel with your beauty and your brilliance and your wisdom. And I can't wait already to have you back.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's always good to see another light warrior. I'm calling you a light warrior, not a light worker, because I think you go beyond light worker. You're already fighting the good fight out there.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Well, you beautiful beings out there, thank you for hanging in that long with this long today with us, with Beverly and I. And again, take care of yourselves. Take care of yourselves. Be kind, be loving. Know that you are healing something on some level. We all are as we ascend, as our mother ascends, Mother Earth ascends in her grace and glory. We are ascending too. And those old programs, those Word Star, Word Perfect, old window programs, they don't work in here anymore. We have to get rid of them or we're going to get stuck with the other 2D losers. So come on, guys. Anyway, my name is Danny Henderson. I do send love to you from my heart to yours, and I'll definitely, definitely see you all soon.